What's up, everybody? This is Rob Brandt.
And this is Rick Brandt, and we are the Brothers Brandt.
Welcome back to episode 137 of the Brothers Brandt podcast, Dumb and Dumber. Now, which one of us is dumb and the other one is dumber?
I think we know. I
Rick
think
is
the listeners know.
clearly the dumber one.
Like I said, I think the listeners know.
So
I guess I'd have to be dumb enough to record 136 episodes of this podcast with you. So I guess that does make me dumber.
So this is a really fun episode because we've been doing sports episodes and concerts. And this whole podcast started with my brother and I just wanting to share our stories of how we went on these epic sports road trips, 10 games, 10 days, 12 games, 9 days, Super Bowl, all this stuff. And we just did things we loved with the people that we loved. My brother being someone that I love. And, you know, we would also turn nosebleed tickets into on the field experiences, which didn't hurt. But this was a different route. In 2014, we wanted to share this story. 2014, my brother and I, Rick and I, went to the Dumb and Dumber sequel that was released in 2014, and we dressed up like Harry and Lloyd did in Dumb and Dumber in the orange and blue tuxedos at the movie theaters. So this episode is all based off of Dumb and Dumber, the original movie. The sequel. We're going to talk about, you know, how the production was made and just the night.
Rob, this episode, as you perfectly described, is going to be a blast. And I think our listeners will truly enjoy it. And I think it'll hit home. If the first 136 episodes haven't struck a chord about not giving a you-know-what, getting out there, having fun, and just dressing the part and just being a little over the top, but at the same time, having good sense of humor with it all. That's what this whole thing's about. So in 1994, the original Dumb and Dumber movie was first debuted.
And Rick, for our listeners, Dumb and Dumber, like we quote it all the time. You know, that and Seinfeld are like the two things we quote all the time, pretty much on a daily basis.
Also, I'd go as far as saying society will quote Dumb and Dumber lines on a regular basis. And I think it's so far down, so far removed that I think some people in society will quote Dumb and Dumber, not even knowing that this is where some of those lines like, "You're telling me there's a chance." Like people, I hear
what was all that 1 in a million talk?
Exactly. And it was like when we had
I'll have to excuse
Larry
my
Thomas.
friend. He's a little slow. The town is back that way.
Exactly. The Soup Nazi came on our podcast, Rob, and it's like, no soup for you. And I don't even think some people, like so far 15, 20, 30 years down the line now, really understand where it all originated. So Dumb and Dumber is now actually going to be, believe it or not, this sounds crazy to say, but it's going to be 30 years old next year. So again, 1994, this movie comes out, and Lloyd Christmas, Jim Carrey, of course, and Jeff Daniels, Rob, is Harry Dunne. So it's Harry and Lloyd, and just a little
Dunne. That was Harry Dunne.
It's Dunne. No, it could be Dunne, Rob. I don't know.
Dunne. Yeah.
And so these two guys who are roommates, actually in Providence, Rhode Island, of all places, are just down on their luck. They've both been fired from their jobs. And, well, actually, what's funny is Lloyd Christmas, Jim Carrey, he's a taxi cab limo driver. And he drops off this beautiful woman at the airport who he had no idea, but his husband had been kidnapped, and for ransom, she basically was been instructed to place a briefcase full of what only could imagine to be millions of dollars inside the airport. And it's, as you know, Lloyd doesn't know anything about this. Jim Carrey, the main character, doesn't know that this random passenger has been all of a sudden, you know, life turned upside down and husband kidnapped, and all of a sudden now has to leave a couple mil inside a briefcase inside an airport. And so Lloyd just happened to see what happened and this briefcase be left there, and just thought, hey, wow, I got to get this back to this woman. And he ends up getting fired from his job.
So Rick, time out here, because I got a reference. Like, I know what you're doing here. You're going through you're not the whole script, but giving this synopsis, and we're going to keep doing that. I want to keep doing it, but we just got to interject with the funny quotes. And like, there's this scene where he falls head over heels for Mary Swanson, and he's driving her to the airport. She's clearly going somewhere, and he just goes, "So, flying somewhere?" And she just goes, "Yeah, how'd you tell?" He goes, "I saw the luggage and the ticket, put two and two together."
Love that scene. Quote that regularly. That's a quote that
I mean,
bust
the
out
whole
of nowhere.
movie's quote. He turns to tell her this. He goes, "Yeah, I got worms. I got worms. That's what we're gonna call the store." He goes, statistically, you're actually more more likely to die on your way to the airport than actually in the airport. And meanwhile, there's like a freight, like a tanker blows up behind him.
Oh yeah, he's just like skating on thin ice as far as like head-on collisions go. And I think if I recall correctly, he grabs the suitcase, he like sprints, gets it in this like huge crowd of people inside an airport terminal. Meanwhile, the people that are actually going to pick up the briefcase, who are like these greaser looking couple, man and woman, and they just look like intimidating enforcement type, like, you know, people in leather jackets. And so he grabs the briefcase, and I think he runs, if I recall correctly, like down the gate as if like the plane is still there, and he's trying to get to Mary to give her her briefcase, and the plane is long gone. And if I recall correctly, he just sprints and falls off the end of the gate.
Yeah, the guy's trying to stop him, and he just goes, "Sir, you can't go out there." And it's because the plane's no longer there. And he goes, "Don't worry, I'm a limo driver." And then just sprints down the runway or sprints down the extended bridge, and then falls down. And like, there's like, he's staring at Mary as he drops her off, and he just goes, "Goodbye, my love," and then like crashes into a car in front of him. Airbags explode. And I do that with Shelby when I drop her off. I'm like, "Goodbye, my love." And when he goes back to the house, so like, he gets fired. Harry gets fired from his dog grooming business.
Yeah, he's got a dog grooming business, and it's funny because he's driving around in a van that has been totally shagged out. And when I say shagged out, I mean literally it looks like a dog with like the ears and the feet and the tail, and it's just like a shaggy van, and it looks like a dog. And inside are these dogs that he's responsible for grooming and keeping clean. Meanwhile, he's got like hot dogs and hamburgers back there.
Ordered the foot long. Whenever I give a hot dog to someone, it's always, "Who ordered the foot long?"
Rob, we're never going to get through this podcast.
No, we're not. I'm going to love every.
I'm but these quotes, if you looked up the top, I don't know, top quotes from this movie, I'd say top 50 of them are probably gold.
Just absolute gold. Totally relevant to what's going on. And oh man, there's so many like money ones too. Like, if you actually watch it enough times, like, it gets funnier. And there's like, they're walking back to the house after they get fired, and he just goes, "Got fired again." Yeah, they always fell off. They always freak out when you leave the scene of an accident.
That and driving with your airbags deployed. Rob, seriously, this movie is unbelievable. Yeah, and so, you know, it's funny because it has a cult following to it. If you grew up in the 90s, the 2000s, I just think people are attached to it. It resonates with their childhood. And to this day, like you said, I can listen to it and watch it over and over again. And the jokes in the movie just get funnier. It's never like one of those where, oh, I've seen it a bunch, I'm good. No, I want to watch it again and again.
Yeah, you just pick up on funny jokes after a while, and it's just great. It's just great stuff. I could watch it. I'll probably watch it at some point this week.
So I loved first and foremost, Rob, they decide now, getting back to the plot, that hey, they both are down on their luck. Let's get out to Aspen, Colorado, where Mary Swanson had said she was flying to. Let's get her briefcase back. And the two of them now need to find a way to get across country, essentially, and raise some funds and put together this little road trip to.
Not gonna lie, when we started doing our road trips, I kind of thought of Dumb and Dumber's road trip.
Definitely. We were on a shoestring budget. Now, we didn't have anybody chasing after us. Like those two people that, again, going back to the plot, that were supposed to pick up the briefcase, they witnessed Harry and Lloyd now having possession of this briefcase. They went to their apartment. They knocked on the door. Harry and Lloyd thought they were debt collectors, so they like hid in their apartment, and then eventually like they just skedaddled and they sold off what they had. And one of my favorite scenes is when they sell their dead bird to a blind kid.
Parakeet named Petey.
Yeah.
How that happens is they're driving on their way out with in the what did he call it? Called it like it was some funny name, but it was like the dog. We'll just call it the Dogmobile. And he was like, hey, how'd you scramble for some extra funds? He goes, don't worry about it. I sold a couple of things, pack of cards, thing of marbles. Petey goes, Petey? He didn't even have a head. Harry, I took care of it. Duct taped the head back onto the bird and sold it to a blind kid. Pretty bird.
Yeah, then they go to the kid and he's just obviously blind and he's just petting this bird with like a taped head on. It's hysterical if you're into that type of humor, which we are.
We're very, very stupid, very dumb humor.
So all right, so just getting back again, trying to stay on plot. These two are now on their way out to Aspen, and they're being followed by this duo of individuals that are trying to track them down, get their money. And believe it or not, Harry and Lloyd are so gullible. They see one of them and they pick him up as a hitchhiker. And this guy is now like literally trying to kill Harry and Lloyd. Tell Rob, the listeners, because I know you can't wait another second, about the scene in the car where at one point they lose it.
Dude, I do this all the time with friends. I'm going to pick up a friend to go out to a bar or go to a sports game or whatever. And I'm just like, they get in the car and I go, we usually don't pick up hitchhikers, but I'm going to have to go with my gun on this one. Saddle up, partner. and then he's about to kill them with the gun, and they just see this Mexican family on the side of the road, and he goes, hitchhikers, pick them up and bring them in. And there's like 10 people in this Dogmobile now. Oh my gosh, it's so good.
Anytime we're with people and like we gotta like literally pick somebody up and add them to the car, I just go pick them up.
Yeah, and then they drive, and then they stop off and get some food, and the greaser guy is like on to him. He goes, "These guys are idiots! Like they don't even know what's in the briefcase." And he was about to steal the briefcase, and then they gave him the world's hottest hamburger, and this guy had rat poisoning in one pocket to give to them to try to kill them off, and then he had like his ulcer medication in the other pocket. And they give him this really hot burger, and he falls down, he's gagging, and he goes, pills, pills, pills. And Lloyd literally grabs all the rat poisoning and just gives it to him and starts stuffing it in his mouth. And now the other lady, and this guy obviously dies, but the other lady just goes, "Jeez, these guys are savages. They killed Mento."
And then, so now they're like feeling kind of bummed out about having just, accidentally killed somebody, a complete stranger for all they know. And
It was
they
his
get
die.
some rest.
It was his dying word. It was his last words. Yeah. Besides for the gargling noises.
The next morning, Rob, they get in the car and, Harry and Lloyd, they're driving along. But if I recall correctly, Lloyd's driving, Harry's asleep, try to pick up some extra hours on the trip. And lo and behold, you drove a sixth of the way in the wrong direction. And like they just lose it on each other. And at that point, they're ready to just give up. This trip is just like falling to pieces. They're out of money.
Yeah.
And so Lloyd sells off the van for this little like mini scooter that probably doesn't do more than like 20 miles.
And they're in like Nebraska.
Yeah. This mini bike though, Rob, they've got to get probably, I don't know, a couple more, like maybe another 1,000 miles.
Yeah.
And so they're just on this bike. And what is the scene where they like get back onto the bike?
Yeah, so like they're pissed off at each other and sells the shaggin' wagon, they call it, the shaggin' wagon.
That's right.
And he just goes, Harry, pulls up to him. Goes, Lloyd, where's the van? He goes, went back to town, traded the van for straight up. This hog gets 50 miles to the gallon on it. He goes, saddle up, partner.
Lloyd, and then I love the
Lloyd,
like they're just cruising through the Midwest.
Lloyd, when I think you couldn't get any dumber, you pull a stunt like this and totally redeem yourself.
And then they drive through the Midwest, and one of the next scenes is them like coming up this cold, chilly Aspen, Colorado mountain, going like 2 miles an hour because of the incline and absolutely frigid conditions. And there's this line of like dozens of cars and 18-wheelers just slowly going behind them, and they're holding up all this traffic.
I mean, do you want me to interject on that? It's like, that was happening.
Yeah. And then they get to town and he offers them an extra pair of gloves.
Yeah. It's like, hey, like they have no idea what's in the briefcase. And then they have like nowhere to go, nowhere to stay. They're out in the freezing cold. And he goes, we have no food. We have nowhere to stay. And he just goes, Harry, you got that crazy look in your eye. And he's like choking him out. And he's like, your hands are freezing. You've had an extra pair of gloves this whole time. We're in the Rockies.
And then they get into
fight. They get into this fight, and all of a sudden the briefcase hits the ground, opens up, and millions of dollars are being shown in the briefcase. And then they just ball out.
And it's like, oh.
They ball out, get the nice hotel. Get the nice suits, and they were trying to find in the directory like the name of Mary Swanson, and it was Mary Swanson, and Lloyd's like, I think it's silly slammy swami Swanson. And then Harry goes, why don't you just look on the briefcase? And he had the name Swanson, and then he looked on the briefcase and he goes, Samsonite. I was way off.
Meanwhile, Samsonite is like the manufacturer
of the briefcase. Yeah, and then they don't know how to get in touch with her, and then all of a sudden they see her name in the in like the Aspen what's going on, and there was like some 42nd annual inaugural, like, I don't know, donation or preservation of snow owls. And they ended up attending this event and meeting Mary, and Rick, take it from here.
Well, what ends up happening is Lloyd, again, he's trying to find his long lost lover, right? Mary Swanson.
Mm-hmm.
And what ends up happening is Harry basically tries to set Lloyd up with Mary at the bar. And Mary's mom just juts in and ends up being like, hey, why don't you two go out tomorrow? Go skiing for the day. Get out, get some fresh air. And Harry's trying to dodge it and basically pass it over to Lloyd. But at that point, he can't deny Mary and Mary's mom. So he ends up going out with Mary for the day the following morning to go skiing in Aspen and just have an absolutely wonderful day together. Lloyd,
which is
thinks
hilarious.
that
by the way, time out here. I'm calling time out because at that inaugural snow owl preservation meeting, they what? don't shake your head at me. So at the big event, they are wearing an orange and a teal tuxedo, which is very important for our listeners to know, because in the beginning of this episode, when we saw the sequel, we had on the orange and the teal tuxedos when we went to the sequel. And we also had the canes that they had as well, that they did a sword fight with in the beginning. And we just went to like the Edentown Mall, the Monmouth Mall, and just went and saw this movie with our teal and orange tuxedos on.
What was so funny about that night, Rob, was that like so many people were coming up to us to get pictures with us, not necessarily probably thinking that we were the actual characters in the movie, but rather just two guys having a great time. Like, you got to do this. And it's like when we go on our sports road trips, we don't try to sneak in anywhere. We'll wear like the loudest suits, the outfits you can possibly find. And we'll just go and have a great time. And that's what it's all about. That's what we enjoy doing. And that's what we did for the...
What's going on here with your headset over there, champ? You having a malfunction?
Listen, this is a big production we got going on here. And
it's tangled up like the weed.
We're good, brother. We're good. That's what editing's for.
We're not gonna let that rip.
So we had a great time at the movie theater. The sequel was good. You can't ever top the original, but the sequel was good.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a really fun experience. We wanted to share it with our listeners. Rob, why don't you take it from here?
Yeah. So then Harry's going on a date with Mary essentially, and then he's like, hey, like, he comes back and he's like, I'll put a good word in for you. I'll get you a date. And he's telling Lloyd, he's gassing him up, and he's like, yeah, I got you a date. Meanwhile, he didn't get him a date at all. He couldn't man up and say anything. So then Lloyd sabotages Harry with laxatives and then proceeds to go to Mary's place and basically surprise Mary and say, I drove all the way across the country to see you. And then she's like, do you have my briefcase? And he's like, yeah, I have your briefcase. Let's go back to the hotel room and get it. And then they go back to the hotel room, and was it the husband? Was the husband like pretending to be, or not the husband? No, it was Andre. It was Andre, who was like a friend of theirs, was the guy that was keeping the husband hostage. And he set up the whole thing to try to extort like millions from this family. And I just like, such a funny scene was when they were running up the stairs and Lloyd was tripping Mary to get to the top of the stairs. And Lloyd gets into the hotel room with Mary, and Mary's like, I have to go to the bathroom. And he's like, okay. And he's practicing his lines. He's just so nervous. He just goes, Mary, I've been dying to tell you this. I desperately want to make love to a little schoolboy. I mean, when I'm with you, I feel like a little schoolboy. He goes, what are the chances of a guy like a girl like me and a guy like you getting together one day? And she goes, not good. Mary, I've come a long way. Just hit me with it. Like, not good, like 1 in 1,000. He goes, more like 1 in 1,000,000. So you're telling me there's a chance. Woo!
The line of the movie.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden Andre jumps in, and or Harry comes back in. Andre comes in, has a gun to him, and he's looking through the briefcase, and he just goes, "Where's all the money? Where? Those are IOUs, sir. They're just as good as money, down to every penny. You might want to hold on to those. This one right here, 275,000. Might want to hold on to that.
Rob, also a line we quote all the time. So,
Yeah. It's an IOU.
long story short, actually, we gave you the long version because that's the point of our
Long
podcast, is
story
to tell
long.
you all of the details.
Yeah.
And
But I think one of the cool things, I mean, are you good to move on? I wanted to talk about the production. This was like crazy what I was reading here.
I was just going to say Harry gets shot, but he actually met up with some of the FBI people before going into the room. He had a bulletproof vest on. He goes down. Lloyd thinks that his best friend Harry's been killed. And now Lloyd and Mary are at gunpoint when Harry jumps up and fires and shoots him dead. FBI agents come into the hotel room. Everybody's saved. And the last scene in the movie,
Well,
Rob, is arguably the greatest scene.
yeah. Well, that, and then Harry, you're alive. And you're a terrible shot. He missed Andre like 7 times. What if he shot you in the face? Yeah, what if he shot me in the face?
He says to the FBI agents who gave him the bulletproof vest,
that was a risk
we're willing to take.
Yeah, the end of the scene gets reunited, or the end of the movie, Mary gets reunited with her husband, and Harry and Lloyd are walking for some reason down the road. Massive tour bus comes up, Hawaiian Tropic tour bus, bikini girls, and hallelujah, hallelujah starts playing. And they're just like, we just need a sign, and they're just like, hey, we need 2 oil boys to oil us up on our road trip. Do you guys want to do it? And Lloyd just goes, you're in luck, ladies. There's a town about a mile that way. I'm sure you'll find 2 lucky guys there. And then they chase it down and they go, you realize what you've done? You have to excuse my friend. He's a little slow. The town is back that way. And then they proceed to just go, yeah, we just got to keep our eyes open.
Yeah, that last scene of the movie is just fantastic. And speaking of the production, Rob, Carl Swanson, who was Mary's father, just happened to be his name, Hank Brandt, spelled exactly like ours, coincidentally from New Jersey as well. All of the signs just point to the brothers Brandt and Dumb and Dumber being one and another.
Oh my God. And the production on this New Line production, I was reading this, Rick, and this was wild. Like the Peter Farrelly's what was it, agent, and so Peter and Bobby Farrelly are the producers, and they didn't know who Jim Carrey was. They just knew him as the white guy from Living Color. And then all of a sudden he had Ace Ventura pop off, Pet Detective just pop off. And then they were like, oh my God, we got to get this guy. And they like struck gold with him. And Jim Carrey negotiated a salary for the movie of $7 million. So he got paid $7 million to do Dumb and Dumber. And then Jeff Daniels, who is a more of like a serious actor, his agent was like telling him not to do this movie, but he ended up doing it, and he only got paid $50,000 to do the movie. Isn't that wild? 7 million and 50 grand, especially like back in that day.
It's just crazy to think the difference between the two. I mean, they both play such integral roles in the movie.
Phenomenal.
And to be that far off. Rob, they were interviewing possible candidates as Steve Martin and Nicolas Cage for possible actors for this movie, which was pretty crazy.
Martin Short too.
Yeah. So like pretty cool. And then one of the things that I found out about, which I had no idea about until we did some research on this, is that Jim Carrey, actually, when he was a child, he got into a fight in school, just, like kids do. And actually, one of his teeth, he had like a chipped tooth. And he had that cap as he got older. And it was funny because he's in the movie got a chipped tooth. And apparently they said that he had simply removed his crown temporarily, which just, I mean, man, I was wondering that during the movie, but now I know it was legit his actual chipped tooth.
Yeah, like when we first watched the movie, I was like, how did they do that? Like, what the heck did they do with costumes? And yeah, it was pretty cool. And then I just thought it was cool, like the scenes where everything took place. Like um the scenes in Aspen, it actually wasn't even filmed in Aspen. It was in Breckenridge, Colorado, and Park City.
Beautiful
Um
places. If you haven't been, you got to go.
Beautiful. Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado is the hotel. And then obviously Cumberland, Rhode Island. Like I just thought it was so crazy that they started this story in Rhode Island. And I've driven by that big blue bug, in Rhode Island, which is pretty famous. Just really cool stuff here. Really enjoyed sharing this story with the listeners here. And it's all about just going out with people that you love, doing some fun stuff. And look, we could have been just regular Rick and Rob wearing what we're wearing right now, going to the movies, but we were like, you know what? Let's have some fun. Let's rock the tuxedos. We had so many people coming up to us. The little kids that had no idea that this was like a sequel were like, what are these two weirdos doing? But the majority of the people at the movie theater saw the first one and they were like, these guys are hysterical. And everybody wanted to take a picture of us. And it was like, I think it was like a random Wednesday night. Right.
Yeah.
So just great stuff. And we encourage our listeners to do that.
Absolutely, Rob. It was fun recording this podcast with you and sharing one of these hilarious stories of ours from back in the day. We've got some really great content coming up in the upcoming podcasts. For all you listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in to episode 137 of the Brothers Brandt podcast, Dumb and Dumber. I'm Rick Brandt.
And I'm Rob Brandt, and we're the Brothers Brandt. Thanks for listening.